I'm not asking again. Show me the proof.
Officer, I don't carry it at work, but I
No more excuses. Provide it now.
am a citizen.
Imagine working your fingers to the bone for 30 years to build a small business, only for a man with a badge to walk in and try to destroy everything in 5 seconds, just because he didn't like the look of you. This is exactly what happened to a woman named Vanessa, who thought she was safe in her own shop, until a bully in a uniform decided to test her patience and ended up learning the hardest lesson of his life. Before we get into this wild story that is going to make you very angry and then very happy, I want to know where you are watching this video from right now. Please go ahead and drop your city or country in the comment section down below, because I really love seeing how far these stories travel around the world. Vanessa was a 54-year-old black woman who had spent every single penny she had to open her coffee shop on the corner of a busy street because she wanted to leave something behind for her children when she got too old to work. She was the first person to arrive at the shop every morning while the moon was still out, and she was the last person to leave at night after scrubbing the floors until they shined like mirrors. On this particular afternoon, she was standing behind the counter cleaning the espresso machine that she had saved up money for 3 years to buy. The shop was quiet and empty because the lunch rush had just finished, and Vanessa was looking forward to sitting down for a few minutes to rest her tired feet. She was humming a song and wiping down the counter with a cloth when the little bell above the door rang to let her know that someone had walked inside. She looked up with a warm smile ready to greet a customer, but the smile dropped right off her face when she saw the man standing in the doorway. It was a tall white man named Nicholas, wearing the green uniform of an ICE agent, and he was not smiling back at her at all. He stood there with his hands on his hips, looking around the shop with a look of disgust on his face, like he smelled something bad. Vanessa felt a knot form in her stomach because she had seen officers come in before for coffee and donuts, but this man gave off a very scary energy right from the start. He did not walk to the menu to look at the drinks, but instead he walked straight up to the counter and leaned over it so far that he was almost in Vanessa's face. He didn't say hello or ask for a menu, but instead he looked Vanessa up and down with cold eyes and demanded to see her proof of citizenship immediately. Vanessa was confused because she was just standing in her own business, wiping a counter, and she had never been asked for papers while doing her job in all her years of living in America. She took a deep breath to keep her voice steady and told him politely that she was working and did not have her birth certificate or passport in her apron pocket, but she promised him she was a citizen. She thought that would be enough because she was speaking calmly and showing him respect, even though he was being very rude to her in her own store. Nicholas did not like that answer one bit because he was the kind of man who wanted people to jump when he said jump, and he did not like it when a woman stood up for herself. His face turned red and he slammed his hand on the counter so hard that the sugar jars shook, and he shouted that she needed to stop lying and produce the documents right now, or he would take her in. Vanessa was shaking a little bit now because she was alone in the shop with this angry man, but she stood her ground and told him again that she could not show him what she did not have on her person. She asked him to please leave if he was not going to buy anything because he was scaring her and disrupting her business. That was the moment Nicholas decided he had heard enough and he was going to show Vanessa who had the real power in this situation. He looked at the shiny, expensive coffee machine sitting on the counter next to Vanessa, and he grabbed it with both of his hands and shoved it as hard as he could. The heavy machine crashed onto the floor with a terrible sound of breaking metal and glass, and hot water sprayed all over the floor and onto Vanessa's legs. She screamed and jumped back to get away from the boiling water, while Nicholas stood there, breathing heavy and looking at the mess he made with a smirk on his face. He looked at her and told her that maybe now she would learn to listen when an officer gave her an order. Vanessa was in shock looking at her broken machine that was the heart of her business, and she knew right then that she had to call for help. She reached for the phone on the wall with trembling hands while Nicholas laughed at her and told her to go ahead and call the police because they would believe him and not her. She dialed the number and told the operator that an agent was destroying her shop and threatening her and she needed help right away. Nicholas did not try to run away or leave the shop because he was so arrogant that he believed his badge would protect him from getting in trouble for what he did. He just leaned against the counter and waited for the police to arrive while Vanessa cried silently, looking at her destroyed property. Do you think people in power should be held to a higher standard than regular people? If you agree that they should follow the rules too, type yes in the comments below right now. While they were waiting for the police to come, something was happening next door that Nicholas did not know about. There was a house right next to the coffee shop where a man named Arthur lived, and he was very serious about keeping his home safe. Arthur had installed very high-quality security cameras all around his house that recorded everything in crystal clear video 24 hours a day. One of his cameras was pointed at his driveway, but it also had a perfect view through the big glass window of Vanessa's coffee shop. This camera had recorded the entire thing from the moment Nicholas walked in the door to the moment he pushed the machine off the counter. Arthur was home that day, and he heard the crash and the screaming through the wall, so he went to his computer to check his cameras to see what was going on. When Arthur saw the video on his screen, his jaw dropped because he could not believe an officer of the law would act like a criminal. He saw the police cars pulling up outside, so he grabbed his tablet and downloaded the video clip and ran out of his house as fast as he could. Inside the shop, 2 police officers walked in and saw the broken machine and the water on the floor and looked at Vanessa and Nicholas. Before Vanessa could even open her mouth to explain what happened, Nicholas started talking very fast and loud to control the story. He told the police officers a complete lie and said that he came in for a routine check and Vanessa attacked him and slapped him in the face. He pointed at the broken machine and said that Vanessa knocked it over while she was trying to hit him, and that he was the victim in this situation. The police officers looked at Vanessa, who was a 54-year-old woman crying in the corner, and then they looked at the federal agent in his uniform. Sadly, they seemed to believe Nicholas because he was law enforcement like them, and they turned to Vanessa with stern faces. They told Vanessa to put her hands behind her back because she was under arrest for assaulting a federal officer and destroying evidence. Vanessa felt like her world was ending because she knew she didn't do it, but nobody was listening to her side of the story. She cried and begged them to check for fingerprints or do something, but the officers were already taking out their handcuffs to take her to jail. Nicholas was standing there with his arms crossed, looking very proud of himself, because his lie was working perfectly. He thought he had won and that he was going to ruin this woman's life just because he felt like it. But just as the officer was grabbing Vanessa's wrist, the front door flew open and Arthur burst into the room, holding his tablet up in the air. He shouted for them to stop and not to touch her because he had proof of what really happened. The officers stopped and looked at Arthur, and Nicholas's face went pale because he realized something was wrong. Arthur walked right up to the police and played the video on his tablet for everyone to see. The video showed everything clearly and there was no sound, but the picture told the whole truth. It showed Nicholas yelling at Vanessa while she stood calmly with her hands down. It showed that Vanessa never touched him or slapped him or even raised a hand against him. And most importantly, it showed Nicholas grabbing the machine with both hands and throwing it on the floor while Vanessa jumped away in fear. The police officers watched the video in silence, and then they looked at Nicholas, who was now sweating and looking at the floor. The mood in the room changed instantly as the officers realized that Nicholas had lied to their faces and tried to frame an innocent woman. They put the handcuffs away from Vanessa and walked over to Nicholas, who tried to stammer out an excuse, but it was too late. They told him to turn around and they cuffed his hands behind his back and read him his rights right there in the middle of the wet floor. Vanessa wiped her tears and thanked Arthur for saving her life because without that video, she would have gone to prison for a long time. Nicholas was fired from his job as an ICE agent immediately after his bosses saw the video. But Vanessa was not done with him yet because she wanted to make sure he paid for the damage he caused to her shop and her mental health. She took him to court and sued him for everything he had, and she also sued the agency for letting a man like that have power. The judge saw the video and was absolutely disgusted by Nicholas's behavior and ruled in Vanessa's favor. He ordered that they pay Vanessa $4 million for the emotional distress and the destruction of her business. Vanessa took that money and she fixed up her shop to look better than it ever did before. But she realized that she didn't want to work every day anymore, so she hired people to run the shop for her. She bought a nice house by the beach and retired so she could relax and enjoy the rest of her life in peace. She won the battle against a bully who thought he was untouchable, and she proved that the truth always comes out in the end. If you enjoyed this story about justice being served, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.